There we go, and welcome back to another episode, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this message finds you well. Well, I say message, it's less a message, more of a continual stream. Good evening, Bob. How's things in your world, sir?
Yeah, very, very good. Nice that the sun's shining for once and it's not raining and everything's in the world when it's sunny. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. What was it from English class in high school? It was called a pathetic fallacy, when the weather reflects the mood. So obviously it would do it vice versa as well in terms of the stories.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned last week that we were going to have a focused episode on Desmond Morris. Desmond Morris, who sadly died 19th of April at the age of 98. A zoologist, an ethologist or ethologist, I'm still not sure how you pronounce that, surrealist painter, broadcaster, and arguably the scientist that first handed a mass audience the tools to read human behaviour from the outside in. So what this is it's kind of a tribute, really, a humble tribute to the man. You know, what made Desmond Morris uniquely positioned to decode human behaviour when everyone else at the time was busy just trying to explain it away, you know. And for me, zoology was the key to that whole paradigm shift. In terms of my notes, I have it here that he was trained under Nobel laureate Nicolaus Tinbergen at Oxford, and he was studying animal behavior with the same rigorous ethological method that was applied to fish and birds, who then turned that lens on humans. So it's not really speculation, you know, in terms of I've seen the arms folded, therefore whatever. He's applying the discipline side of it, less about theorizing from an armchair or from a YouTube channel, as so many people do. He's more about getting involved and observing it in the field and cataloging it and building a working system, you know, where the method precedes the insight always. Bob, what's been your experience of Mr. Morris?
Well, I know him from a long while ago. Showing my age here, but in the late 60s and late 60s it would have been, he was on TV a lot, mostly children's TV. I think it was Grada TV he actually worked for. And around that time, there was two, it was a bit confusing really, because there was two Morrises doing more or less similar things. There was Johnny Morris, who had a show called Animal Magic, where he had talking animals, where he would show the animals and he'd put words in their mouths and what they were saying and everything. And he was one end of it. I think he was on BBC. And then there was Desmond Morris, who had a show called Zoo Time. And he, at that time, I think, if I'm right, he was something to do with London Zoo. I think he was employed by London Zoo, and he was studying the animals there. And then I knew him for all of that, and you know, he was quite a big part of my childhood TV watching. And then suddenly, it seemed a bit odd because suddenly he's this very controversial figure because he brought out the book, the Naked Ape. And I know at the time I was thinking, is it the same guy? Can it really be the same guy? Because he was more children's entertainer to serious author. But I don't think that was the first book he'd written, but it certainly was the most impactful. And I remember it being all over the TV, discussed on TV, late night shows as they were now, about because have you read the book?
I've got his collection. Yeah.
It was, you know, it was quite scandalous because he talked about sex and all sorts of things in there, which were
how dare he?
A little bit taboo at the time. But you know, the premise of it, that you know, humans, rather than looking at just body language, he was talking about humans as just another ape. And if you lined up a line of apes, we'd be the one at the end who's freezing cold because we've got no hair.
Oh.
Yeah, Yeah, even now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But the funny thing,
go on, sorry.
I was going to say, the thing is he was quite timely because before him, there wasn't really anything to do with behavior, body language, that
Yeah,
sort of thing. The only thing that I can remember before him was Alan Peace.
yeah, Barbara and
And he
Alan.
did a book called yeah, like the later versions with his wife, yeah,
Yeah,
and that I mean that's so heavily if you've read that, I have got it, and you read it now, these sort of things like one gesture has one meaning,
yeah,
uh, reliability of deception detection, and the thing that he really pushes in there was cultural university versatility of all sorts of things. And so it hasn't aged well, but having doing this, I've had another look. I've got an original copy of Man Watching, which I acquired
yeah,
from a second-hand bookshop a few years ago, and it reads really well
yeah.
today.
Agreed.
It hasn't aged at all,
Yeah.
and it is more in depth, isn't it? Because he's doing it from a zoological point of
Mm,
view, where he's comparing
mm,
what we do with what animals do,
mm.
and a lot of our behavior is learned from animals, and so it makes perfect sense in the world we're in now.
Yeah. I mean, one of the, I mean, there's many, but one of the big points I took into my personal work on that was the zoological influence around homeostasis and the conservation of energy with movement. And again,
Mm,
it's not energy in a spiritual sense. It was how much energy do I need to use to be able to find food if I'm an
yeah,
ape, or to hunt prey if I'm this particular animal, whatever it is. So, and as a side note, being obviously, there's crazy cat ladies. I am a crazy dog man. So I bought
mm,
his book, Dog Watching,
yes, yes,
which was just as insightful, but like specifically to the Naked Ape, it was like what happens to behavioral analysis when you strip away the social performance and then just look at
yeah,
what the biology is actually doing.
yeah,
It was the
yeah,
argument that we are, as you said, just a species of primate, but our behavior is still largely governed
yeah,
by
yeah,
evolutionary drivers. For anyone that's even stumbled across Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, this is all there: status display,
yeah,
territorial behavior, sex stuff, aggression management. It wasn't metaphorical. It was
no,
the influence on how it is that you act, and like the what's the best word, the reflection, no, the iterations of it today, like when people talk about getting angry. I
mm,
mean, if that isn't a 21st century interpretation of these kind of basic
yeah,
drivers, I don't know what is. If
mm,
if you look at from an investigator standpoint, an investigator who forgets even momentarily that the subject across the table is an animal
mm,
that's working with incomplete data at times. The suit, if they're wearing one, that's a costume. Um, that always stuck out when I was learning French. That le costume was for the suit. Um, or la. I don't remember which of the gendered nouns it is, but costume I was always told was a suit. But this
yeah,
evolutionary architecture underneath, it's not. It's the it's the it's the driver for it. Julie says that idea brings her back to brings her back to Face Off. Great movie, great movie.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Talking about wearing masks there
Funny,
underneath.
yeah, funnily enough, one of the things that he has been criticised for um, was that he heavily relied on biology
Mm,
to explain away, very sort of complex cultural things as
mm,
well. And that some people did say that he was heavily committed to that bioevolutionary approach. But
yeah,
then there's nothing
yeah.
wrong with that. I mean,
No,
that to me is perfectly fine. It's what I believe in. It's what I got from Robert Sapolsky, Behave.
yeah, yeah.
He's all in that genius. agenda. So fully buy into that. What I liked about his books, it first got me working and thinking about conversational planning and looking at a conversation as a whole and then dividing it up because he talked about, if I'm not mistaken, I think he called it sequences and signals.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I call them events and actions. But he talks about actions as well. So I got that from him. So every action sends a signal.
Quick question. When was the last time you trusted your memory? But your memory without checking a device. Most people don't lose intelligence. They lose discipline of attention. MindForge is a structured training system that is designed to rebuild focus, recall, and your mental stamina, but to do so in just 10 minutes a day. No productivity hacks, no dopamine tricks, no supplements you need to swallow, just cognitive conditioning. So if you want your mind to feel sharper within a week, omniscient-insights.com/mindforge or right there. Train your mind like it matters.
And, within a conversation, you'll have a series of sequences or events which comprise actions and have an intent behind them or a motive behind them. And so I think he really is at the cutting edge in those days and today of setting like the parameters for
Yeah.
forensic application of behavior study.
Here, 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 here. It's it's he's one of those people that I mean, take the opinion with whatever kind of size serving of salt that you would like to, but he's one of those people that if you're going to look at behavioral analysis with any degree of seriousness, you have to consider. You know, he was the guy that was asking like, if you were going to build some kind of systematic field guide of sorts to human behavior and how you would
Yeah,
observe it in real time, where do you start? You know,
yeah,
the man watching or and then becoming people watching afterwards catalogs human non-verbal behavior, but with the same methodology. You know, it
yeah,
was gesture, posture, gaze,
mm,
proximity, touch, micro movements. Each of those categories
yeah,
was just data, wasn't decoration. And the way we've started referencing it in class now is like the difference between a signal and noise. You know, signal is
mm,
indicative of a piece of information. Noise, there might just be volume, but it's a
yeah,
challenge. It's a challenge to read or put together into any kind of picture. If you've got this um, inventory of observable
yeah,
signals that are then organized by a function that could work or
yeah,
could be analogous to the situation that you're in, you are immeasurably further ahead than somebody that's stuck in the Alan Pease way of going, well, that elbow movement means this and that neck movement means this and this finger movement means this, so that all adds up to. It's not happening. If you have a fleeting interest in this type of awareness of human behavior, Desmond Morris is required reading. It's
oh,
required reading.
yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. One of the sort of things I remember, and I found it sort of sold me on the idea of innate actions and everything is in the book, he talks about triumph displays
Yeah.
and talking about, making yourself bigger, taking up more space. But he also talks about runners,
Mm.
blind runners who, when they achieve, put their arms in the air just like everyone else does. It's an
Yeah.
instinctive thing, which we've carried down through our genes, through
Yeah.
our, through who we are
Yeah.
from way back. And it's the same way that I suppose that Stevie Wonder can write a whole album about plants that he's never ever seen.
Yeah.
It's this thing, and the innate, the innate nature of being, if you want to call it that, and something which a lot of people who say that they are, because let's be honest, what really astounds me is that
Mm.
he isn't more well known.
Yeah.
And that's when you sort of compare him against people who are online and are very present and are making bold statements. And you know, I don't know if those people do references in their books and everything, but
They should.
I
They
think
should.
that they would be very detrimental or perhaps even um, dishonest if they didn't quote a reference
Mm.
to People Watching or the Naked Ape or any other work that he's done,
Yeah.
because he is so influential. And like I say, for me, he has given me the building blocks on what I've built what I do.
Yeah.
And I've taken references from all over, but the events, the actions are fundamental to what I do. You look at someone and you've got that, the first 30 seconds event, which is more or less universal,
Mm.
the greetings, and and then you move on,
Mm.
and that's another event with different actions within it, and that sort of sets the tone for whatever else follows.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that influenced certainly like the prerequisites of Polar was his question, like from the human zoo stuff, was what does captivity do to behavior? And then you go
Yeah.
like, why does that even matter? All right,
Mm.
what captivity is it's analogous, behaviorally speaking, to a situation that you feel, whether you can or not, different story, but you feel that you can't get out of. So it's
Yeah.
anything from high pressure to institutional to work to
Yeah.
beyond.
Yeah.
He argues that this kind of urban life replicates the psychological conditions of captivity. So it's
Yeah.
overcrowding, the hierarchy of stress, status anxiety, displacement behavior.
Yeah.
Humans, when we're in those conditions, we produce tells, if you want to use the buzzword,
Yeah.
that we wouldn't generate in low pressure environments.
No. No,
That's
exactly right.
useful to
Yeah.
an observer. So if you want to see what someone is suppressing, like exploring the inverse of it, if you want to see what they're suppressing, put them under pressure and then
Mm.
watch what leaks. This is Morris's idea. He gives you a kind of um, a taxonomy almost.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that's the very opposite of pop
Yeah.
psychology or the BuzzFeed of do these 7
Sure.
things or do these 12 things or
Yeah.
any of that nonsense. It's applied ethology.
Yeah. And I did look today. I looked at his reference lists, and he's actually got three or four different. He's got the ancient where it all comes from as
Yeah.
reference lists, and then he comes up. But he does mention Lewin's behavior equation. That
Yes.
behavior equals
One
how
of
you
your
function in
favorites.
an environment, which is very much what you're saying.
Yeah.
And something again you don't hear very often people talking about how the environment can really affect people.
Yeah.
And Morris does talk about that, about the captive animals, like you say,
Yeah.
and captive animals, um, whether they're physically um, captive or whether they feel captive in their brains, it will affect how they behave.
Absolutely.
And even when doing work with people at airports, and things like that, points of entry,
Mm.
and for threat detection.
Yeah.
It's always about the context, because people will behave that function and that captive that they're in. They're captive because they're in the airport, and they'll behave in certain ways depending on what is happening at the time, whether the
Mm.
flights are on
Mm.
time or the flights are off time. And so you have to recalibrate what you're looking at, compared, in tune with that, into what's going on in that environment at that time.
Yeah.
And that's something which he talks a lot about, is how the environment affects animals. Like you said, the dog watching and the cat
Mm.
watching.
Mm.
A lot of that is about how they behave in different
Yeah.
environments.
Yeah. Yeah. Massively. And there was There was work back even before that he cites, and how these questions that we seem to skip over the significance of. Most of them, I mean, I haven't done the numbers on it, but most of them, they come back to Morris. Most of the ones that I've experienced,
Yeah,
like if you look at this idea of what leaks when nothing is supposed to, he was asking
yeah,
what's the difference between a deliberate communicative gesture and just an incidental one. Like me, then I'm
yeah,
I'm scratching my nose and I'm scratching my eye. Which one of them, if any, carries more intelligence value?
yeah,
Morris, as far as I can find, he identifies incidental gestures as movements performed for a functional purpose that
mm,
simultaneously leak emotional states. So the person who straightens
yeah,
papers on a desk during some kind of a difficult situation, they're not tidying. The person who
mm,
covers their mouth while speaking is not always cold, or these
yeah,
these are displacement activities. They occur because the body
yeah,
needs to process an emotion, and we're not permitted to express it in the culture of whatever captivity based situation that we're in, right?
yeah, yeah. And they, well, a sort of negative out of that is that you spot these signals, um, these actions that are happening. And I was just doing it when you were talking then because I was concentrating. I've got a bracelet on my arm and I was pinching it against my skin.
Here's the truth: clarity under pressure isn't natural, it's trained. Axiom is a cognitive framework, one that is designed to improve your reasoning, to improve your memory, and then the subsequent decision making that goes along with that. Not theory focused, not just inspirational quotes, mental architecture. So if you want to think clearly and do so when it counts, go to omniscient-insights.com/axiom, or right there, because in chaos, the clear thinker wins.
Because I do that.
Same.
But what is the downside of that is that people will jump to conclusions based on that because it's not just about seeing those signals
Yeah.
like that. And that was the Alan Peace thing. It's this, so it must be this. He's not looking at you. He's got eye aversion, so he must be
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not. We're much more nuanced than that,
Yeah.
nuanced to us. And especially now that we've got a greater understanding through the fMRI of how the brain works,
Mm.
and sometimes, with certain people, it doesn't work in exactly the same way as other people, and we can badly misread them. So it should be said that those signals that you're receiving are just, it's well, that's it, but what does it
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
does it mean anything?
Yeah.
And the only way you get that is to look at these events and actions and see if and that's the beauty of what he says about the sequences and signals or
Mm.
events and actions is to observe multiple ones of those within a conversation, and then you'll see if they're repeated,
That's it.
if they're repeated behaviors, because then they just become, I can't remember what he calls them, but he does have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
way of describing actions that are just part of who a
Yeah.
person is. They don't mean
Yeah.
anything.
Well,
They're just part of their communication.
yeah, I think it was down to the incidental stuff, because like
Yeah.
you're deliberate, and he's the guy asking questions of context
Yes.
and alternative explanations. The deliberate gestures, they can be rehearsed. These these
Yeah.
these incidental ones that just happen, because you've got an itchy nose
Yeah.
or something in your eye or whatever it is. Uh,
Yeah.
the baseline for any subject has to account for their habitual incidental repertoire before any
Yes.
deviations
Yes.
from it can be read as meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Morris gives us the categories,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
analysis, well, put my teeth in. The analyst, I was trying to say, builds the baseline, and you can look at Morris's work. I mean, for all of his foibles, you can even go back to Freud stuff on parapraxis and the like
Mm.
from previously. But
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
he's the guy pushing from an advocacy perspective of a scratch of the nose is just as much a scratch of the nose as it is,
Yeah.
a sign of nervousness in multitudinal different
Yeah.
situations. It's up to the individual and how they collect their information and conduct their investigation ahead
Yeah.
of time, because there's no clear this means this. That idea, behavior not being binary, could be argued that its original creation, or at least the idea, could have been inspired directly from Morris himself.
Yeah, yeah. And funny enough, I was out Sunday. Usually go out for a coffee on my own on a Sunday, and I was sitting in a coffee shop, and knowing we was doing this, there was a family came in because it's near to a place where kids play football. So the kids have been playing football, and I watched the mother and one child was too young to be playing football,
Right.
and looking at them from that lens of like being another animal, and you can see the preening and the
Mm.
touching that they do, like apes would do with one another,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
picking and all this sort of stuff, and it just brings it home to you how real and how it is using his methodologies that
yeah.
he describes. He never really did a book. He did a book on watching, so
Mm.
what I was doing, but he didn't do a book on analysis
Yeah,
of what you're seeing
yeah,
and fitting it into. And I would have liked to have seen that,
yeah.
but I think he got a little bit disenchanted, I think, with that when it became so popular. I think he moved
It's
away from it
probably,
a little bit, almost
yeah,
like an aversion to it.
yeah. It's probably be the case. I mean, uh, um, one. I mean, to kind of bring us round to a closing point. This this practical, analysis, observation driven methodology, how can people replicate it? I mean, you can start
Mm.
with reading Morris's work. You
Yeah,
should have done that already. He spent decades in the field, before even writing anything. Zoos, public spaces, markets, sports stadiums. He's cataloging what he sees without imposing any kind of an interpretation on it first. And that's one of the
yeah,
problems that a number of those in any kind of analysis roles they face. They jump to the end game first and then enter into like a post hoc rationalization for all of the information that came as a contributing
yeah,
factor for it. The system comes after the data. He called it the ethogram approach, the same
yeah,
method that's used for mapping animal behavior repertoires, just applied to humans. So most people that call themselves observers, they're actually running pattern matching algorithms against assumptions that they already hold. Morris builds the patterns from scratch, from the field up. That's discipline, to be able to see and just watch
yeah,
without interpreting or catalog before concluding. I think he described that directly in
yeah,
people watching, this ethogram approach. He attributed it to
yeah,
Tinbergen. So these types of approaches,
mm,
we can really start to make sure that we aren't jumping to what our feelings say, and then trying to pick and choose confirmation bias, all of the information that we've encountered to, besides that, and then trying to
mm,
justify our opinions on the backside of it. That's one of the most important takeaways from Morris's work for me. How
yeah,
about yourself? Final thoughts wise.
yeah. I think if I was to describe Desmond Morris, you've mentioned it a few times, the ethology, and the fact that he was one of the people that I think, firstly, and a lot of others do it now, actually linked science and storytelling. Um, and his stories were real stories about creatures that he'd come in contact with
Mm-hmm.
or that he was studying.
Mm,
But there were stories about them. And even went way back in the 60s when I was watching his TV show, that's what drew me into it,
mm,
is that he would explain. the connections between animals and what they were doing, and he would link that to stories about how we do things like that. And finally, all I would say is you can pick it up. I picked it up, an original copy.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it, read it.
I mean, come on. He worked until the end. He wrote 80,000 words of the Naked Ape in 30 days on his dad's old typewriter. You know,
Yeah.
the method he
Yes,
handed,
that one. Yes, he did.
yeah,
Yeah.
the method he handed all of us took a lifetime to build. So I think the very least that we can do is to use it. You know, so if you didn't know who he was prior to this, at least you do now. And more importantly, you know what he built. You
Yeah.
have an idea as to how you can use it. Desmond Morris spent 98 years watching us. He left the notes. So our job
Yeah.
is really to pick them up, you know,
Yeah.
if nothing else. So with that in mind, folks, we shall love you and leave you. Thank you again for stopping by, and until next time, take it easy.
Yeah. Bye.